It is an honor and privilege to be joined today by Mark Amaru Pinkham in Sedona, Arizona. Mark is the author of numerous books, including Return of the Serpent Wisdom, Guardians of the Holy Grail, World Gnosis, and City of the Star People, among others. He is the Grand Prior of the International Order of Gnostic Templars and an accomplished Gnostic Master. How are you today, Mark?
Very good, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you. We're absolutely honored that you were able to make time and join us today. We understand your schedule's a bit tight and that you do quite a bit of traveling. You had mentioned you just did some traveling, and I was kind of interested in that. Can you tell us a little bit about where you went?
Well, my wife and I set out to celebrate our 25th anniversary, which I mentioned we feel is a pretty big deal since we never thought we'd get by the first 2 years. So it's kind of a big deal for us. And we went down to Mount Shasta, which is one of our favorite places. And those of you in the listening audience that if you know about Shasta, you know it has incredible energy.
Sure.
And it's associated with Lemurian, an underground or subterranean city called Telos. It's got all these different legends associated with it, which may or may not be true. I don't know. All I know is it has an incredible energy. And every time I go there, I have an amazing experience. And I did with my wife. We reaffirmed our vows and felt, close, probably closer than we have in years, actually.
Beautiful.
And I attribute that to the energy of the mountain. So we're both very, very happy with how that went.
You chose well as far as the location goes. So you're back in Sedona now, which is obviously a highly significant spiritual point on the planet. So you chose well there to set up your headquarters for the Templars.
Obviously, I like vortexes.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. So, Mark, just to move forward, we had, again, this month in our issue, we're looking at religion and asking the question, why? You were one of the absolute first people we thought of to get some real deeper insights on this, primarily because of your intense study, obviously your global presence as a Gnostic master, and basically just your knowledge. We had the unique opportunity here of doing a Q&A in written form with you prior to this interview, so we want to encourage everyone listening to look here and actually read Mark's answers to the questions that we posed. I think there was 8 or 9 of them. Awesome stuff for any spiritual seeker on the Gnostic path or otherwise. So we really want to just cover two follow-up issues in this video. We want to begin with religion, and at what point, Mark, do you think that religion and religious practice can actually become fanaticism and even transform into terrorism?
Well, as you know, I talk about the right-hand path and the left-hand path as religion, fundamentalist religion, specifically being part of being the right-hand path, and spirituality, yoga, meditation, these kind of practices that we do to open up to the spirit within ourselves are part of the left-hand path. And I combine the two paths, the right and left-hand path, together as one path because I believe that both are necessary.
Agreed.
The right-hand path I call the male path because it has to do with developing more of the male parts of oneself, specifically the intellect, the mind, the intellect, because in the right-hand path, you're basically studying and learning about God through the mind. You're learning from a book, you're learning from a teacher, a priest, and a mom, whatever. You're not going out into nature and trying to find God intuitively or spontaneously or through visions. You are getting the information about God mainly through your mind. And this is what's important and valuable about the right-hand path is that it teaches good discrimination. It teaches you what God is. It teaches you what God's laws are, and how by following these laws that you can improve yourself and hopefully ascend to some heavenly plane at the end of your life. It also, and this is very important, it teaches you discrimination. What is good for your path to God? What things and what practices and what ideas are good for you on your path to God that will take you closer to God, and what aren't. And so this is very important on the spiritual path to know these things. And so this is what's developed, is you develop good discrimination on the right-hand path. You also develop good discipline. All right, discipline's important. Regularity in your spiritual practices, whatever they are, and purity of heart, because it's your goal to serve this higher power through His laws and teachings and so forth. But the difficulty with the right-hand path is it can take discrimination to an extreme.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that it gets very much into the good and the bad, the beneficent, the evil, the good and the evil. And of course, the most blatant part of that is you have almost always you have a Christ figure, a prophet of a religion, and you have a Satan, you have an evil lord, and you always have a choice in that religion to go either way, to follow the evil lord or to follow the Christ being. And so from the very beginning, religion is divided into a dualistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you go along in the religion and you become, shall we say, more fanatical about that religion, because you put more, as you move along, you invest more of yourself into it.
Exactly.
And you're not really studying much anything else. You are completely immersed in that religion, and it's actually usually discouraged to study anything else
mm-hmm.
by the priests and so forth, because they say this is the way, and we have the good book, and we're right, and basically everybody else is wrong. And so you develop this kind of this outlook, this perspective that you have the path, and nobody else does. You are the chosen ones. And then you start seeing people, other people that don't follow the path and don't follow what you consider to be the laws of God to be evil, and then the fanaticism sets in. You might decide that God has chosen you to do His bidding on this world by destroying everything that is so-called evil.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Christian, you might bomb a abortion clinic, right? For example, right? And if you're Muslim, you might want to destroy somebody who is not following the path. So this is how fanaticism gets started, and it'll continue until that time that the fanatic, the religious fanatic, can start to see that all religions really are connected, and the path that he or she's been following is not really that different from the other paths, and in fact, they all have the same goal, and quite often you find that they all have the same origin.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only going to happen if these religions open themselves up to the study of other religions. And until that happens, you're going to consistently be developing and turning out these religious fanatics.
Well, I think at a certain point they actually turn into political fanatics, and maybe in the mind of the practitioner, or they don't quite understand that they're acting as a political terrorist. I'll just say because at the basis of their thoughts and actions is that underlying, my path. This is God's chosen, work for me or what have you. But actually, I didn't want to bring up ISIS or anything like that. But in my view, I think they're actually more of a political activist group than a religious activist group.
Right, right. Well, yeah. What happens is that these fanatical zealots, well, they do desire to take political office, and their goal is to unite church and state, which which of course the founding fathers of our Constitution was totally against. But that's what they try to do. They're trying to reconnect and bring them back together, so that you'll have a religious political hierarchy like you have in Iran and many other countries.
Yeah.
And even religious fanatics in this country, in the U.S., the Christians, their goal is to do the same thing.
Yep, and I've been out.
They praise George Bush for everything that he did in that direction.
Sure.
And they consider him today to be a great, prophet of their way.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing,
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, it was. As you know, I've been out of the country for quite a few years now, but I follow enough news to know that there's still those underlying intentions, and it's an underlying danger, for lack of a better term. I agree with you, because the separation is vital. This kind of leads me into the next point that we wanted to discuss, which was the balance of the right and left-hand paths, or the separation of church and state, but particularly at the highest levels of governmental rule and religious rule in the Vatican. In your Q&A, we touched a little bit on the connections of agendas between Freemasonry and the Vatican. Can you elaborate a little bit there as far as right and left-hand paths and the overlords and the governmental structures?
Well, there ultimately there needs to be a separation, between the church and state. And if you go back into some of the ancient civilizations, like Egypt especially, even though the Pharaoh was considered to be an incarnation of Horus, of the highest spirit,
right.
He left so much of the religious decisions to be made by the priests, by the high priesthood, and he dedicated most of his time to making decisions regarding the mundane questions and laws and regulations, and so this is how, this was a religious empire, but there's still within that there was that separation of church and state, and we need to get back to that, and there needs to be a separation. We need to understand the religion and the right and left hand path. We need to. Well, it's going to be very hard, I think, to completely separate them, Joseph, in a lot of ways, because the lawmakers are constantly making laws that have some kind of moralistic, ethical background to them.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and so it's very hard to have that separation of church and state. And basically, you could say that to one degree or another, that the Republican Party is a representative of the right hand path, and the Democratic Party the representative of the left hand path, where the right hand path always champions the fundamentalist religion, and the left hand path tends to champion these alternative philosophies and alternative spirituality, and alternative religion. And one is more male in nature, which is the right hand path. You've got the political leaders are warmongers, to some degree, and war hawks, and the heads of the left hand path or the Democratic Party, they tend to be the doves, more peaceful in nature, and this is why, of course, Obama's under major attack right now for not completely wiping out ISIS and totally wiping them off the face of the earth, which all the Republicans are stepping forward and say, well, that's exactly what he should be doing, and that's what we are going to do, when we get voted into office. And so it's extremely hard to make that separation between church and state, even though this is what the Founding Fathers wanted, and they knew what problems could potentially arise if we didn't make that separation. And here they are. This is what we see. This is what's happening.
A side note, Mark, if we can, but regarding the you mentioned a couple times the creation and the foundations of the United States. It's really no secret, I think, at this point that the United States of America was founded on Freemasonry to a certain point, and the New World exploration and the agendas of. How do you think in modern times that is all playing out with respect to the original agendas?
Well, you see, Joseph, the problem was that even though the Freemasons were really into the esoterica and more of the left-hand path, because if you trace back Freemasonry, it will take you back more into the esoteric, into the goddess tradition.
Yeah.
But the problem from the very beginning was that these founding fathers were not just Freemasons; they were also Christians. And
Okay.
it's the same today. In most Freemasonry lodges, most of the Freemasons are Christians, and in fact, you cannot become a Knight Templar, for example, a Freemasonry Knight Templar, unless you're Christian. So Christianity pretty much governs Freemasonry.
Still dominates. Okay.
Even though they are into, let's say, sacred science or sacred geometry, that sort of thing, but they're not at all into the goddess tradition. In fact, I tried to unite the secret societies under the banner of the goddess, like 5 or 6 years ago back in Macerata, Italy. We had a big conference there and invited the grand masters of a number of different traditions to come together, and we all got up on stage and talked about our traditions and basically how we came from the goddess and how we can see that that's what unites us together, and potentially we will in the future come back together again.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that Congress was paid for by the Italian Freemasons, which were totally anti-goddess. And so they had future congresses apparently, but I wasn't invited, and anybody that was in favor of the goddess was not invited.
So the message was pretty clear.
So there was never the coming together, because it's the goddess and the female the female principle, if you will, that unites, that brings together. It's the male principle that separates. And this is what you have in Freemasonry, and they don't want to change. They're not going to change.
Mm.
They're thoroughly male, right-hand path in nature, and it's all about joining this organization and going through the different levels and getting your medals, and the whole time you're just intellectualizing the whole process. You're not really having any kind of real experiential there, because this is the influence of the left hand path and the female principle is that it longs for the emotional intuitive experience.
Exactly.
So if you put a bunch of males and females together in a room, the guys are going to start intellectualizing right away, and they'll be fine doing that forever. And the women are going to say, okay, whenever you're ready talking, let's have an experience, right?
Yeah.
Let's have an experience. So as long as you exclude the goddess and females and the female principle within your lodges, it's going to be unbalanced, and that's what's happened. That's the way it is. It's unbalanced, and this is one reason why a lot of Freemasons they leave eventually, because they've got all their medals, and they philosophize as much as they can about everything, but they're not getting any experience, and so they leave and they go off and try to find experience someplace else. The lodges, you can see, are related to alchemy, that they evolved out of alchemy, because they're alchemical crucibles. There's the balance in all of these lodges, the male and the female, that are represented, but they're not represented in the membership.
Very interesting.
So these lodges can, generate this alchemical force, but you don't have the females that are going to work with that alchemical force, that will use that alchemical force to open up and have a deep mystical experience. The guys don't really activate it, don't really use it, even though it's there. They could use it. So this is it. This is the problem that with Freemasonry, even though it's came out of the goddess tradition, eventually it was kind of co-opted by by Christianity, and that's the way it stands today. So this is why you don't notice you don't notice the esoteric effect so much of these original founding fathers in our government or in Washington, so much as you could. I mean, you can see it in the sacred geometry of Washington itself.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, so much of the symbology, that the iconic symbols of our country are heavily influenced by sacred geometry, Freemasonry, and the mysticism of it all.
Exactly. But what's interesting is that originally that Washington, D.C. was designed so that the Capitol was in the very center. And the Capitol has Lady Liberty on the top, and it has the two houses of Congress on either side of it. So there's a balance there, right? And it's it's the people, and it represents the people. And so it's more related to the goddess, the left-hand path, and this esoteric side of Freemasonry. But then, like about, 100 years ago or so, this was after they set up the Washington Monument, which is obviously a very male symbol, phallic symbol. Clearly. Then they made that the center of Washington, and so it was the male nature. It was the male principle, the male energy,
the driving dominance, of
Washington, not the female energies. And since that time, more power has gone to the executive branch of government rather than the congressional branch, and it's become more, more male focused because of that.
Yeah, as we move forward, not just in the United States, but on a global, I mean, it may sound funny to say, but in a couple hundred years, we may not have dividing lines of countries as we see in this paradigm. But as we move forward as one collective, universal humanity, can you talk a little bit about the importance of understanding and respecting the other faiths, not so much from a left-hand or right-hand path perspective, but just as a human perspective, understanding the need for the mind to explore and express their faith through both paths and all types of denominations?
Right. Well, certainly every path, it was designed for the natives in the area that it was developed, and so there's always going to be parts of every path that are going to be more relatable to those people, those natives, where it developed, where it came from, where it originated.
Naturally.
And I think Islam is always going to be more relatable, for example, to people in the Middle East and Arabs. I think Christianity will be, much more relatable to, Europeans and Americans. But before, Joseph, I believe that these various paths can be accepted, we all have to get to the point of seeing that they see the similarities. You can see that within Christianity there are certain practices and rituals that have their correspondence in Islam or Judaism.
Right.
And you can see that that the origin of the paths were the same. That they started with a Gnostic master, almost in every case, that had the revelation, the high revelation of, and then went back and taught his disciples, and the disciples then went out and created. They were the ones that created the religion, not him.
Right.
And of course, they based it on their interpretation of the original Gnostic prophets' revelation, which, since they hadn't had it themselves, they distorted it, a bit, and then the next generation distorted it that much more, and that much more, and that much more, on and on and on.
As it goes, yeah.
And so they basically all started the same. And also, if you can understand that the goal is basically the same, which is to align oneself with a higher power. Mm-hmm. Even though some will say, well, the higher power is in another universe, and others will say, well, the higher power is inside. But if we can get to the point of saying, well, the higher power is both places. It's inside and outside, right?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the axiom, as above, so below. It's so popular now, but it's so valid, because once we really take that to heart, we realize that there is an external divinity and an internal divinity. Both are equal, and both deserve our reverence and attention.
That's right. That's right, yeah. But for a lot of people in the right-hand path, a lot of officials or priests or whatever, it's, of course, to say that Spirit is inside of us, God is just within us, is total heresy. Mm. And so, and you have to realize, and this is the way I see it, is that people in the right-hand path haven't progressed far enough so they can understand the principles of the left-hand path. It's hard for them to understand that God really does exist within us.
Right.
Because they just haven't evolved to that place where they're ready to understand that. And so this is why there's always been this battle, conflict between fundamentalist religion, and those that are following the alternative paths of gnosis.
Yeah.
The right-hand path has a hard time of understanding this Gnostic alchemical path, the left-hand path, and in a lot of cases, it just doesn't want to. Because it's not, it doesn't comply with the good book. It doesn't comply with what their priests or ministers or imams are telling them.
Yeah.
And so for them, it's they have been programmed from day one to believe that it's evil. It's the work of the Lord of darkness.
Well, Mark, just to advance it a little further while we're on this, do you think that, and I'm mixed on this, I'm asking your honest opinion, do you think that this underlying conflict between right and left-hand path, this duality, on a certain level is necessary simply to keep the order and the physical reality in existence?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean that's what the right-hand path is dedicated to doing more than the left-hand path is keeping this third-dimensional physical reality alive and well, whereas the left-hand path is dedicated to transcending it and then cycling off of it and traveling to some other dimension.
You hit the nail on the head there, because if spiritually speaking or etherically, if every manifestation or soul transcended, that would knock the whole tree of life, for example, if we look at the Kabbalistic map, out of balance. You literally need to keep physical souls incarnating in what some traditions would call the third level of hell, of suffering, to maintain that balance. So I'm just asking, maybe this underlying struggle that is to be human is necessary on a certain level.
Well, I think that you have something there, Joseph. Just as I think that the right-hand path is vitally important to someone on a path to God, both the right and left-hand path. So I think that both consciousness is important. The consciousness of the third dimension, as well as the consciousness of the transcendental consciousness that the left-hand path seekers try to develop within themselves is equally important. So both are important, and I think that we just have to get to a point where we say, yeah, I accept what you're doing, and it's extremely valuable and necessary.
Yep.
And what you're doing, what I'm doing, what you're doing is equally as important. And
beautiful.
But it's to understand the evolution of the soul. We're here for the soul to evolve. This is the big thing, I think, Joseph, is that if we can all get to a point where we can understand or we can agree on why we're all here, what human birth is all about, what human evolution is all about, that it is to achieve, and this is according to the Vedantic philosophy, which I think is the highest on the planet, is to know thyself, and that is the maxim of the mystery school. Know thyself, which is part of the left-hand path, which traditionally comes after the right-hand path. So, so if we can all get to that point of understanding what we're here to do, that we are here to achieve self-understanding, self-knowledge, to ultimately realize that we are spirit incarnate in a body. We're all this. Then we can understand the value of the right-hand path and the left-hand path, and we can understand the value of a third-dimensional consciousness and a transcendental consciousness. We can understand
Fantastic.
all these things
Yeah.
in light in terms of how they can assist all of us in achieving self knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely
then
fantastic.
at that point, we can also design our civilization so that everything, the institutions and everything we do, is supporting each person to ultimately achieve self knowledge. And then, but only when we can get to that point do I believe that we can really say that we have moved into a true age of light.
I agree completely. Mark, before we let you go, I just want to let all of our listeners who are not already familiar with your website, your teachings, everyone go right after this to GnosticTemplars.org, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Mark has an amazing amount of libraries there, Gnostic texts, teachings. There's just a plethora of studies. I myself have been through many of his courses, and it has made a huge impact in my personal spiritual journey and awakening. So I encourage everyone to look at the GnosticTemplars.org sometime very soon, if not today. Also, Mark, we know you just came out with an awesome new book about Sedona, which is where you've been located. It's called Sedona, City of the Star People. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. I have been researching Sedona since I first came here back in 1987, pretty intensely, to try to understand what this place is all about. When I first came here back in '87, I went into a canyon that's the biggest vortex here in Sedona, called Boyne Canyon.
Yeah.
And I went deep into the canyon, and my third eye opened up, and everywhere I looked, I saw temples. And at first, I thought they were physical, third-dimensional, and then I realized eventually that I was seeing fifth-dimensional temples. And then, but later on, I realized that the foundations of those original temples, which are now fifth-dimensional, primarily, the foundation, or the ruins of those original temples that were in Boyne Canyon are still there, right? But they've been distorted by the many floods that have come through here. Oh. Sedona's been underwater almost as much as it's been above the water. And then I learned the legend of the Hopis about Politquapi, the city of the star people. They say that when the Hopis first arrived on North America, they were separated into clans, and they went all over the Americas. And then they finally came back together again. And then they shared notes. Where have you been? And inevitably, they all talked about having been to this place called Politquapi, the city of the star people, that was built by the extraterrestrials, which they refer to Kachinas now. And it was in Politquapi that they learned the secrets, the mysteries of the universe, and the mysteries of human evolution. And they actually were taught the Kachina dances that they do regularly now in the Hopi reservation. And so when I read that or learned about that legend, I traced back the paths, the trails that these clans took once they reached where they are now, and traced them back to Politquapi, because they talk about exactly where they went after they left Politquapi when they went to the Hopi reservation.
Right.
And inevitably, it'll all leads back here. Leads to Sedona. This is the place. And so I knew at that point that this was a temple city in ancient times, and these temples were built by these Kachinas. And then I found this court, this huge court that has temples. It was kind of like in a horseshoe pattern, and there was like a big throne in the center of it. And then I learned that Masao, which the Hopis referred to as the king or the lord of the fourth world, who they met as soon as they arrived in North America, he was in Politquapi, and so this court that I discovered in Boyne Canyon was apparently his court, and so I kind of sat on this information for a number of years until I felt it was time to write about it, and so I did. I've written this book, The Sedona City of the Star People, and now I'm actively working towards spreading this information around the planet, especially the location of this throne, of this court of the king, because I think it has potential of uniting people from all over the world, because there's so many different cultures, civilizations that at some point or another they venerated or they talked about a king of the world, and so if you study all these different legends of these various kings of the world, you realize that they're talking about this same being, this one same being, but they call him a different name, and they give him a different appearance, but he's basically the same being, and so this Masao, this Hopi Masao, is actually the same being that the Hindus refer to as Sanat Kumara, that the Sumerians knew as Enki, that has been known about as Osiris, Dionysus, Quetzalcoatl. He's been known all over the world as this lord or king of the world. And so this throne, his throne, is here in Sedona, and I think that once people start knowing this and understanding it and accepting this, then it has potential of bringing a lot of these religious cultures and spiritual traditions together as one. And I think eventually it will make Sedona into a worldwide, international holy shrine that you'll have pilgrims from many different traditions that will be coming here to visit this court of the king.
Yeah, right now I know Sedona, and just for people who don't know, I'm not sure if you know either, but I was born and raised in central Arizona, just maybe about an hour from Sedona, so it has a high spiritual significance to me as well. But right now, Sedona is obviously recognized as kind of a New Age Mecca, but I think it is going to transpire a little bit further than that as people like yourself come out with these books and start to reveal all this wisdom about what it really is. You know, it's not just by coincidence that people like yourself and hundreds of others kind of set up their foundations there to be near that energy. They gravitate towards it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and I've already had Yazidis. They're the people that are decimated by the Middle East right now, and they have a deity called the Peacock Angel, which is their form of the king of the world. I've had them in the court of the king, and they recognize it as the court of their Peacock Angel. I've had
that's
Hopis
fantastic,
recognizing it as the court of their Masao, and so it's starting now, where we're having different traditions, different religions come here and recognizing this court as the court of their deity.
Yeah.
So it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, just to clarify, the new book is available right on your website, correct?
You can get it right off the website in our web store. That's true, Joseph.
Okay, fantastic. In closing, I just want to sincerely thank you again for making time for Spiritualists International Magazine today. It's been an absolute honor. Your insights will go very far here. So that being said, have a wonderful day out there in Sedona, and we thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been a lot of fun.